She wasn't merely some strange species for us to gawk at like entertainment. When Jim Praxton looked directly into those eyes, like those of a lost kitten, he knew that this universe had hidden a terrible secret. A secret powerful enough to change the course of human history forever. Lanira wasn't simply there to be observed. Each day, she stood behind the polylast barrier in her thin tribal garments, eyes dreamy and filled with a mysterious stillness that no visitor could truly comprehend. They all came to see the exotic specimens at the Galactic Menagerie. But few recognized the intelligence behind those eyes, except for Jim Praxton. As the senior life support engineer for the East Wing, Jim's responsibilities kept him busy monitoring atmospheric systems, humidity levels, lighting, and pressure for all exhibits. His daily rounds rarely involved deep interaction with Specimen 734, or Lanira, as he would come to know her. The one-way observation system was designed precisely to maintain distance between the observers and the observed. The year was 2473 DGTL, under celestial hour, and Proxima Station hung at the edge of mapped space, home to the renowned Galactic Menagerie that housed rare creatures from across 3 solar systems. The East Wing specialized in high-threat endangered species, and among them, Specimen 734 stood as perhaps the most valuable of all. Lanira was the last Nyxarian, a species with blue-tinted skin, platinum-silver hair, and tribal markings etched along her face and arms. What the visitors didn't know, what even Jim didn't yet understand, was that she had survived a planetary genocide, had been captured and contained using memory suppression technology, and that behind her seemingly vacant stare burned a fierce intelligence. Jim's life followed a predictable pattern, maintaining systems, filing reports, occasionally frustrated by busy schedules, but generally satisfied with his quiet existence. He couldn't have imagined that destiny would shift dramatically, with a single glance exchanged through impenetrable glass. For her part, Lanira had grown weary and distant after countless visitors had paraded past her enclosure. The sadness in her eyes had hardened into resignation. She had learned to disappear inside herself as she stood on display, a living museum piece representing an almost extinct civilization. This was the reality of their separate worlds, the free engineer and the captive alien, until one fateful night when everything changed. During a late shift, while adjusting the humidity levels inside Lanira's enclosure, Jim happened to glance up through the observation glass. For the first time, he caught Lanira looking directly at him. Her eyes contained what he could only describe as cosmic sorrow, a depth of feeling he had never witnessed in any creature before. Then, something extraordinary happened. Lanira suddenly began drawing mysterious symbols on the glass with her finger. The symbols bore striking similarities to Proto-Elamite script from Earth, a writing system that had existed 5,000 years ago, 17 light-years away from Proxima Station. The logical impossibility of this connection made Jim's blood run cold. His heart raced as fragmented memories of allied species from historical records flashed through his mind. How could an alien species from another star system possibly reproduce ancient human writing from millennia past? As quickly as she had begun. Lanira withdrew her hand and resumed her disinterested demeanor when other visitors approached. But Jim couldn't unsee what he had witnessed. A mystery waited to be solved, and it was far more significant than merely observing a rare specimen. This was a call across civilizations, a connection between species that challenged everything he thought he knew. Unable to sleep after his shift, Jim returned to his quarters and sketched the symbols Lanira had drawn from memory. He accessed Earth's linguistic database, searching through Sumerian, Proto-Asiatic, Linear A, Linear B, and other ancient writing systems. His search proved fruitless until he discovered Proto-Elamite, Earth's oldest undeciphered writing system, dating back approximately 5,000 years. The shock nearly knocked him from his chair when he observed an 80% similarity between the Nyxarian symbols and this ancient Earth script. How could a writing system from 3000 BCE exist in the mind of a being from 17 light-years away, he wondered. Could our species be connected somehow? Or is this merely an incredible coincidence? Jim struggled with an internal conflict. He tried to convince himself. Lanira probably just drew symbols that coincidentally resemble human writing. I'm being oversensitive. But the symbols haunted his thoughts. He faced a moral dilemma between his professional responsibilities. He needed sleep to complete his shift, especially with the upcoming system evaluation, and his growing desire for answers. Should I dig deeper, knowing that too much interference might violate the menagerie's confidentiality regulations? Ultimately, his curiosity prevailed. Jim crafted a makeshift device, a low-frequency vibration transmitter attached to the pressure-maintaining glass pane. That night, he returned to the East Wing, cautious of security personnel. Lanira was waiting by the glass, her eyes expectant. Jim gently tapped on the glass. 3 rhythmic beats. "I am—" Lanira immediately responded by placing her hand on the glass and speaking. "My name is—" her voice resonating through the device. This was the first time Jim heard Lanira's voice, melancholic, yet filled with the pride of a defeated warrior. They exchanged a few simple sentences. Jim revealed his name, and Lanira disclosed her true identity. Lanira, not Specimen 734. A feeling of resonance between them began to form, a connection that transcended their different origins. Emboldened by this contact, Jim secretly accessed a secure server through a maintenance shortcut to uncover classified files. What he discovered horrified him. Intake report, Specimen 734, Nixarian, following controlled genocide event. The document noted concerns about memory activation, unwanted, and must eliminate all cultural connections with other species. The files described how Nixarians had been deliberately exterminated by the Vaxian Council, the ruling species of the menagerie, to prevent any leakage of historical secrets, universally suppress shared ancestry. Jim felt sick with the realization. I've unwittingly served a genocide conspiracy. His decision became clear. He had to rescue Lanira. When he next communicated with her, Lanira's attitude had shifted. Until now, I only knew fear, but now I see hope, she confided. She shared fragments of the legend of the original life tree, cedars, and the Nixarian people. In the beginning, Nixarians and humans shared a common ancestor before being separated by a force called cedar, which scattered memories and sent both species wandering across the galaxy. As Jim spent more time near Lanira's enclosure, he noticed Threll, the menagerie director, passing by with increasing frequency, fixing him with cold, suspicious glances. Jim also faced conflict with the menagerie's strict regulations. Absolutely no direct communication between staff and specimens, and all classified documents are top secret, not to be leaked. Meanwhile, Lanira wrestled with her own doubts. Should I fully trust a human? They once allowed my people to be genocided. But when she experienced the resonance with Jim, trust began to bloom. Jim soon discovered that a security upgrade, brain monitoring system, would be installed the following night. For the first time, all mental resonance would be detected. Time was running out, measured now in hours rather than days. He hastily repaired a portable atmospheric regulator, a device capable of causing a cascade failure in the station's main wing, drawing away all security forces. He also prepared a pragmatron, short-range transmitter receiver, so Lanira could communicate with him and alert him quickly when needed. As the station quieted for the night cycle, Jim slipped out of his quarters, carrying the portable module to a remote technical room. False alarms began blaring in the north wing, life support machinery malfunctioning. Security forces rushed toward the disturbance, accompanied by strobing emergency lights. Jim seized the opportunity, racing through a maintenance tunnel toward the east wing. Lanira waited by the maintenance glass panel. When Jim tapped lightly, she quickly handed him the pragmatron. They exchanged a quick code phrase. "They're escorting us back to the maintenance room to unlock security." Using his engineering privileges, Jim interfered with the polylast lock mechanism. It would take 3 minutes to open. Lanira stood ready. Suddenly, security forces detected Lanira's movement and threatened to fire warning shots. Lanira parted her lips in a silent command, making a sign that froze the security team. She was using a bit of energy resonance effect to create momentary disruption, like dampening vibrations, making the polylast vibrate more. The polylast mechanism creaked, and the maintenance door opened slightly. Lanira slipped through, changing into the maintenance uniform Jim had brought. She was slender and short but very quick. For the first time, they stood together outside the glass enclosure. In the dark corridor, Jim attached the pragmatron to Lanira's face, allowing her to see through its screen. She nodded, immediately responding to Jim's voice. Careful. Threll could arrive any moment. They navigated through a series of narrow corridors, weaving between pipe systems and machinery. Every step posed danger. Security lights could illuminate them. Patrol drones could detect them. Lanira trembled as cold vapor wafted through the flickering neon lights. Her mind was torn. Now I'll be free, but Jim might sacrifice himself to save me. She thought to herself, if I refuse to run, all secrets will be buried forever. But if we escape, how many lives will pay the price? Her determination grew with each breath. As they approached the elevator area, security lights flickered off. Threll and his security team had received an alert about unauthorized psychological energy sources. Threll, the menagerie director, stepped forward silently, his large eyes cold. Jim Praxton, I warned you not to interfere with Specimen 734. He tapped a command to open the security corridor door. Jim replied, she's not a pet, she's a person, and this entire menagerie is covering up genocide. Lanira seized the tense moment to lunge toward a ventilation duct. Both of them dove inside. The security door slammed shut immediately behind them. In the dark ventilation shaft, Lanira leaned against Jim. We need to reach the secret shuttle dock outside. Jim wiped sweat from his brow, hope and fear rising within him. If we just use the thrusters to disrupt the guidance system, we can hijack a shuttle back to Earth. Lanira whispered, if we fail, there will be nowhere to hide. But if we succeed, humanity and our people will awaken. Jim closely monitored security forces spreading throughout the station. He installed his pre-calibrated module on a gas pipe, triggering a pressure shock that caused a docked shuttle to float free from the bay. All security personnel were called back to handle the emergency. Lanira guided them through the maintenance pipe map. They crawled beneath ventilation tunnels until they reached the launch bay area. When Jim and Lanira emerged onto the launch bay floor, Threll and his security team blocked their path. End this fantasy now, Threll commanded in his mechanical voice. You, girl, back in your cage. And you, return to the maintenance compartment. We'll deal with you later. Jim doesn't belong in your world, Lanira nearly shouted. I will decide for myself and not let you continue to abduct my people. Lanira unleashed her warrior instincts, nimbly dodging attacks, using her hand to trigger a small plasma burst from the maintenance suit, web nanofiber suit, Jim had provided. Jim hacked the launch bay control system, activating automatic docking, starting the shuttle. Security fired warning shots as Lanira dodged toward the support platform. Swinging her arm, the plasma beam burned through a security guard's armor. Screams echoed throughout the launch bay. Threll realized, we cannot lose two valuable specimens. Activate the shuttle control system. The shuttle shot into space, activating its thrusters when Lanira performed the resonance technique. Her eyes glowed blue, the markings on her arms illuminated. Jim held Lanira's hand in the cockpit. What are you doing? You can't activate thrusters against engineering protocols. Lanira whispered. Just place your hand on the control hook. Our minds will resonate. We can control the Cedar-embedded technology, integrated genetic remnants, in the shuttle. As the shuttle entered Earth's near orbit, Lanira and Jim shared a hurried kiss, exchanging a final burst of strength. The kiss wasn't merely an expression of love, but triggered a powerful stream of genetic memory transfer through Jim's bloodstream, a mystical moment. Simultaneously, Threll ordered the launch of combat satellites to stop the stolen shuttle, creating a space firestorm. Jim and Lanira's shuttle caught fire slightly, shaking in the atmosphere. They activated the primitive parachute landing mode. The shuttle plunged toward the Egyptian desert, near the Great Pyramid of Giza. In that moment of stillness, the shuttle scattered sand. Flames erupted in the thin air. Jim still embraced Lanira, his eyes filled with determination and love. The screen shifted to the pyramid, gradually revealing a mysterious metal structure beneath the sand, signaling a supernatural and scientific turning point. Lanira whispered, "Do you see the cedar symbol? It's responding to us." Jim nodded. "We'll activate it and unveil the secret of human history." They held hands as they approached the cedar structure hidden beneath the pyramid. Mysterious blue lights began blinking, signaling the moment of global awakening. When Lanira and Jim placed their hands on the cedar symbol, a column of blue light shot straight into the Egyptian night sky. Across Earth, synchronized nodes at Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, Angkor Wat, the Temple of the Sun, also began flashing, sending waves of genetic resonance around the globe. Billions of people, regardless of race, experienced floods of Nyxarian memory and ancient memories rushing back, advanced scientific knowledge, images of massive spaceships, cedar torches. Threll and the Vaxian team from Proxima Station hurriedly fired landing missiles, preparing to eliminate Lanira and Jim. But as the missiles approached, the station cameras switched to empathy override mode, showing Lanira and Jim at the moment the light column erupted over Earth. The Vaxian officers realized too late. Earth's population had simultaneously paused in astonishment, many kneeling to welcome their new form of brethren. Threll grew frantic. "This is the moment we've lost. They've awakened the collective subconscious of humanity. We cannot stop this." At the pyramid, a delegation of humans, including United Nations leaders and archaeologists, appeared. They were astonished as Lanira stepped out of the light. Lanira immediately spoke in multiple languages, activated by the Universal Protocol Translator through resonance. She announced the complete history. Nyxarians and humans are one, once traveling together on an ancient ship across the galaxy. After being scattered, we were captured and brought to menageries to prevent memory transmission. The crowd was stunned, mixed with confusion and hope. Many scientists rushed to record and discuss. Could cedar technology be restored? Lanira stood with arms crossed, tears glistening. "My people were thought to be extinct. Now Nyxarian souls across the galaxy will awaken to their origins." Jim looked at Lanira with pride and affection. "We've started a historical earthquake." He was invited to speak at the United Nations, where representatives from more than 200 countries and over 1,000 extraterrestrial civilizations gathered. Proxima Station automatically ceased all memory suppression programs. Threll was forced by UN representatives to appear, amid fierce public outcry over mass genocide. The Vaxian system accepted a Human-Nyxarian Reconciliation Alliance. Many Nyxarians still imprisoned in other menageries were gradually released, finding relatives, if any survived, or fellow species members. Lanira experienced a moment of elation, feeling every corner of family memory and tribal lineage spreading throughout her soul. She cried in Jim's arms, "I am no longer alone." Jim was welcomed by the scientific community as a hero, but he reminded himself, the real mission continues, recovering all traces of cedar technology, guiding humanity toward the cosmic village. 6 months later, 2473-2474 DGTL. Proxima Station had been transformed into the Cedar Heritage Reconciliation Center, where human and Nixarian historians and engineers collaborated to recreate ancient technology. On Earth, the Cedar Nodes, Stonehenge, Angkor Wat, etc., became awakening gateways. Each gateway activated once on anniversary days, honoring the openers, including Lanira and Jim. Lanira evolved from a cold prisoner to the first interspecies ambassador, representing Nixarians at the Planetary Alliance. She learned the value of trust between species, while realizing that forced memory, superstition, only created tragedy. Now she was strong, guiding her people to participate in rebuilding connections with other scattered children. Jim Praxton transformed from a quiet night engineer to the reconciliation architect, responsible for leading the engineering team restoring the Cedar network throughout space. He learned a lesson about faith. A single empathetic glance could change an entire universe. Despite widespread acceptance, extremist human groups opposed the idea that aliens were originally our ancestors. They called Lanira a memory invader, intent on destroying social structures. Jim and Lanira faced new political pressures. Could they change the consciousness of billions? Or would they be caught between factions of pure human fanatics and mixed species advocates? Lanira and Jim stood atop the Great Pyramid, watching the blue light column fade into dawn. Around them flew the United Species Federation flag, a symbol incorporating the Nixarian logo, a spiral of ancient characters, and the human DNA symbol. The image of the awakening child, a portrait of a half-Nixarian girl, placed at the entrance of each cedar structure, symbolizing the future alliance. Lanira, now bearing the role of Dawn Messenger, addressed the Planetary Alliance. We were once separated by lies. But now, thanks to a pure gaze, the innocent eyes of a lost kitten, two species have revived ancient power. From now on, we will build together a new millennium, gathering all values from the earth through the stars. Jim squeezed Lanira's hand, whispering, I once thought I was just an anonymous engineer. Now, we've become the openers of the future door. The camera spiraled upward, revealing dozens of Nixarian spaceships landing on Earth, signs of a galactic reunification era. As the months passed, the Cedar network spread through the solar system and beyond. Old wounds began healing as humans and Nixarians worked together to decipher the ancient technologies that had once united them. Children of both species played together in new schools, established to teach both histories as one shared story. Jim often found himself staring at the stars at night, marveling at how a single moment of true seeing had changed everything. One look, he would tell the students who gathered to hear their story. That's all it takes to recognize another soul. Lanira became not just a political figure, but a spiritual leader who helped bridge the gap between scientific advancement and cultural preservation. The tribal markings on her skin, once seen as exotic curiosities, were now studied as repositories of mathematical equations that had been preserved through genetic memory. Threll, surprisingly, did not fade into disgrace. After initial resistance, he became an advocate for transparency in interspecies relations. I believed I was preserving order, he admitted during the reconciliation tribunals. Now I understand I was merely preserving fear. The original cage that had held Lanira was preserved in the new Cedar Heritage Museum, a reminder of what happens when one species presumes superiority over another. Next to it stood a simple plaque with words that Jim had written. Look with your heart, not just your eyes. Not all Earth nations embrace the changes with equal enthusiasm. Some regions, particularly those with long histories of isolationism, remained skeptical of the cosmic narrative. They established human heritage preserves, where traditional histories were still taught. The Planetary Alliance respected these choices, recognizing that forcing acceptance would only create new forms of resentment. Meanwhile, Cedar technology revolutionized space travel, medicine, and communication. The genetic memory techniques allowed for instant language acquisition, while resonance technology created pollution-free energy sources that worked in harmony with natural systems rather than depleting them. On the first anniversary of the Great Awakening, as it had come to be called, Lanira and Jim returned to the Great Pyramid. This time, they were not alone. Hundreds of thousands gathered in the desert below, and billions more watched through resonance links as all the cedar nodes activated simultaneously. Today, we don't just celebrate what was found, Lanira told the assembled crowd, but what was never truly lost. The connection between all thinking beings, the shared ancestry that makes us not just neighbors in space, but family across time. Jim stepped forward, his hands still linked with Lanira's. 1 year ago, I was just a maintenance worker who happened to look up at the right moment. But that's all any of us needs. One moment of truly seeing another being. The blue light that shot skyward that day was brighter than before, visible from orbit. Astronauts reported that it seemed to connect with similar beams, now emanating from recently discovered cedar nodes on Mars, Europa, and distant Proxima b, forming a network of light that briefly outshone the stars themselves. Scientists would later determine that these light connections were actually transferring massive amounts of data, genetic codes, historical records, technological blueprints, that had been stored in the cedar network for millennia, waiting for the species to reunite. Somewhere in deep space, other scattered children of the original civilization began their journeys homeward, drawn by the beacon that Lanira and Jim had ignited. The galaxy was awakening to its shared past, and the future, once constrained by lies, now expanded with possibilities as endless as the stars themselves. And it had all begun with one engineer, looking into the eyes of a captive alien and seeing not a specimen, but a person. Each night, as Earth turned toward the stars, parents of both species would tell their children the story of the lost kitten eyes that found their way home, reminding them that sometimes the most powerful act is simply to truly see one another. The Cedar Code, gradually deciphered from the activation of nodes across Earth and beyond, revealed astonishing truths about human and Nyxarian origins. Both species had been genetically engineered by the ancient Cedar civilization, a race of beings who had evolved billions of years earlier and had seeded compatible life forms throughout the galaxy. The Cedar Masters hadn't disappeared. They had evolved beyond physical form, becoming energy beings who occasionally manifested through the node network. Their plan had always been for their children to evolve separately before reuniting, bringing diverse perspectives to shared challenges. The Vaxians, it turned out, had not invented the menagerie system. They too had been manipulated, assigned as keepers, by fragments of Cedar programming that had corrupted over time. What began as a conservation effort had warped into containment and suppression. Jim's engineering background proved crucial in the months following the awakening. While diplomats and politicians struggled with the implications of humanity's revised history, Jim focused on practical applications. Under his guidance, Cedar technology was adapted to address Earth's most pressing problems: climate restoration, disease eradication, and sustainable energy production. Lanira found her greatest challenge in helping fellow Nyxarians adjust to freedom. Many had been kept in isolation for generations, their knowledge of their own culture limited to fragmented memories. She established cultural recovery centers, where elders could share what they remembered, piecing together a more complete picture of Nyxarian civilization. "We aren't just recovering what was," she explained to a group of young Nyxarians. "We're creating what will be." The resonance technology that had allowed Jim and Lanira to communicate, despite barriers, became the foundation for a new form of interspecies understanding. Direct emotional and conceptual exchange bypassed the limitations of language, allowing for unprecedented cooperation. Not all developments were positive. As Cedar technology spread, some militaristic factions attempted to weaponize resonance capabilities. A brief, But intense conflict erupted when a coalition of isolationist nations attempted to seize control of the node at Stonehenge. The crisis was resolved not through force, but through mass resonance. Millions of humans and Nyxarians joining minds to overwhelm the attackers with empathy. "Violence cannot stand against true understanding," Lanira observed afterward. "When you feel another's pain as your own, you cannot continue to inflict it." The most profound changes occurred in how both species viewed themselves. The revelation that humans and Nyxarians were essentially cousins, different expressions of the same cedar template, challenged long-held beliefs about uniqueness and specialness. Religious leaders, philosophers, and ordinary citizens grappled with what it meant to be part of a designed lineage, rather than the product of purely natural evolution. "We have not lost our identities," Jim argued in a widely broadcast debate with human traditionalists. "We've gained context. Knowing our origins doesn't diminish what we've become. It illuminates the path we've traveled." 3 years after the Great Awakening, the first cedar ship was reconstructed using the recovered technological blueprints. Unlike the utilitarian vessels humans had previously built, this ship was a marvel of organic technology, partially grown rather than assembled, responsive to thought as well as physical controls. Jim and Lanira were offered the honor of commanding its maiden voyage to Proxima b, where the largest concentration of surviving Nyxarians had been discovered. The journey that would have taken years using conventional propulsion was completed in weeks through cedar resonance folding, a precursor to what humans had theorized as warp technology. The reunion between Earth-based Nyxarians and their Proxima cousins was broadcast throughout both solar systems. Tears flowed freely as family lineages separated for generations were reunited. Genetic memory activation revealed connections that records alone could never have preserved. Back on Earth, the Cedar Heritage Center expanded into a university devoted to integrating ancient wisdom with modern discovery. Students of all species studied together, learning not just facts and theories, but techniques for accessing ancestral knowledge stored within their own DNA. The cedar symbol, a spiraling double helix surrounded by radiating lines, became a universal emblem of reconciliation. It appeared on flags, buildings, and personal items, a constant reminder of the connection between past and future, between separated peoples now reunited. On quiet evenings, Jim and Lanira would often return to the spot in the Egyptian desert where they had first activated the cedar node. Away from official functions and public appearances, they could simply be themselves, two beings who had recognized each other across an unbridgeable divide and had somehow built a bridge anyway. "Do you ever wonder," Jim asked one such evening, "what would have happened if I hadn't looked up at that exact moment?" Lanira smiled, the markings on her face glowing softly in the twilight. "The cedar records suggest there are no accidents. Perhaps in every possible timeline. You always look up." "I'd like to think so," Jim replied, taking her hand. "I'd like to think that in every universe I see you." Above them, the stars emerged one by one, not just distant suns, but worlds to explore, each potentially holding other scattered children of the ancient cedar civilization, waiting to be remembered and brought home. And so the story that began with a captive alien drawing symbols on glass continued to unfold across the galaxy, a testament to the power of truly seeing another being, and the universe-changing potential of a single compassionate glance.